How you doing, man?
So, not too bad. How are you? It's been
Good.
like
It's
a
been a
month or
while.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
yeah, it's hard to believe.
the minute we decided let's do theme months, we miss a whole month.
I know. Uh, yeah, we asked for trouble, I guess, by trying to plan so far ahead.
Yeah, it seemed like a good idea though.
Oh yeah, yeah. I still think it kind of is, but yeah, just unfortunate, I guess, the way everything worked out.
Yeah, yeah. But here we are now. I guess that's the
Yes,
important thing, right? So
yes.
how things been going with you? Still working the two jobs?
Yeah, yeah. It's been very busy. The good news or the bad news, depending on how you look at it, is that just today, my boss sent me what will be my final assignment for the one job. So it's kind of good that I'll wrap that up and then I'll just concentrate on the other one. But the bad news is it's apparently a doozy, as we have labeled it. It's a big one, so it's, I may take a few days or even a week to solve this one. So it's still for the next week or so. I may still be kind of in the midst of it, but yeah, it's going okay. I'm managing to sort of balance it, and hopefully that will continue. And then maybe in a week I'll just have one job.
So is this the same thing where you're getting footage and you're trying to put footage together for some crime scene show or something?
Well, it's the one job is writing a script, so I'm writing the episode of a crime show. In fact, this is my
And you
second
have to
one that I'm
write
doing for
around some footage, right?
that.
Or am I
Not
wrong
in
about
this.
that?
Uh, no, not in this case. There have been shows where they give you a certain amount of interview footage that you have to look through. So
Because
there
I
is.
believe the one time we spoke about this, you said like you had a certain amount of footage and you had to like write around that footage that they could show. Or am I completely off with that?
No, you're probably right. You could even be talking about the second job that I'm doing, which is
Mm.
actually fixing scripts for an entire season of a show because they didn't realize what they wanted the formula to be, and they wrote all the scripts. And then afterwards, they went, "Oh, we've got to change all these," because they kind of changed their mind about how things were going to fit together. And so, in that case, I have footage that they're giving me that they're reusing. Oh, and actually, yeah, that like I guess you might be remembering because I wrote two episodes of this show, and that was kind of the concept is they were reusing old footage that they had shot for previous shows and working it into the new show. So that's probably what you're remembering. So yes, in that case, there was footage, and it's part of my job now when I'm fixing these scripts. I have to watch the hour-long episode of the other show to look for footage that I can use to replace some of the other footage that they have to get rid of. So it can be time consuming, but it's certainly been interesting to say the least.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, I'm glad you're busy, man. It's always better to be too busy than not busy enough, you know? Idle
True
time.
enough, true enough, and you're busy as well at your job.
Yeah, I mean, the hotel job I have has always been something like when I used to work just the graveyard shift, it used to be something where it's like I come in, I work for like an hour, and then I can spend the rest of my time writing, editing, working on film projects. That's the whole reason I got the job, and I stayed there because it was easy. But after the pandemic and I came back as a supervisor, then the manager, now I'm going to be converted to GM in January. It's just been a lot more time consuming. It's almost not even worth it. Because I don't know, and just like dealing with so it's a small hotel, so I'm dealing with entry level people, and it's just these entry level people, it's either older people who are poorly educated, that's why they have entry level jobs, or it's like younger people who like lack a lot of like fundamental skills or attention, or they're just finding themselves. So it's just like you're not dealing with people that are reliable for various reasons. And they all need the job. The older people need the job to pay the bills, kids, whatever. Younger people, it's like, hey, I'm trying to get my own apartment. I'm trying to survive, pay off college, things like that. But it's just difficult. They all need it, but they don't give the requisite effort as someone who needs it. Like, if you need it, like, why are you being so fucking lazy? Like, why can't you get this? Like, it's just difficult, like, because you're in this constant cycle of you know transient people, and it just gets mentally draining, like going over the same thing with a new person like every month. And last night I had like this 13-hour day, and because I wanted to work with all three shifts, and then I leave, I'm thinking, okay, I'm good. Like the overnight shift, like I've done it so many times. In like an hour, I finished off everything she had to do. So I'm like, hey, you're pretty much good for the rest of your shift. Then I get all these issues that the morning shift are calling me about. So I had to investigate. So I have the cameras on my phone. As soon as I leave, she goes into a vacant room and sleeps for the rest of her shift. I'm like, what the fuck? It's like, this is a shit. I'm tired of dealing with shit like this. Like, I want to like
Wow.
focus. I want to like focus on movies. I want to shoot again. I had some
Yeah.
actors call me up recently. I'm like, fuck it. Let me just try to get something going and try to get a project off the ground. That's what I was thinking 2 days ago, or actually, yeah, 2 days ago. I'm like, yeah, let me get a project off the ground. I started contacting actors and I'm looking at projects, and then I got to deal with this shit. It's just like, fuck. At a certain point, like I just got. I mean, I feel like I'm pretty cold already, but like I just have to get more cold, with these people. Like I can't be friendly with them because they consume your time, when you try to be too empathetic. It's just like, get your fucking shit together. Like I know you have bills to pay, like I know you need the job, but like your desperation for the job has to manifest in being a good employee. So it's just stressful dealing with that stuff. I'm hoping some of those skills are going to translate in dealing with actors and shooting again when I start back, but it's just, ugh, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, if it's any consolation, I think that there's people like that everywhere, not just on the entry level positions, but I think that in every profession, there are people who just want to punch the clock and get their paycheck, and they don't care about doing a good job. And they'll specifically avoid doing the job. They'll just sort of put in the time and hope nobody notices that they haven't done anything. So it seems to be a certain type of person, or it's a certain part of human nature. I don't know. But I've never been that way. I always take pride in the job, the results. But yeah, there's a lot of people, and maybe they're living a better life, because they're not stressing out over making everything good. They're just kind of getting away with stuff. And maybe that's the way to be in some ways. I don't know.
Yeah, but the stress you feel about when you don't do the right thing, right? You're stressed out about, am I going to get caught? Because I've done that before. Like, I remember, like, as a kid, like, single mother, so, like, you do knucklehead shit. I remember, like, some of my more stressful days where it's like, I'm going to cut school and have fun, but you're filled with so much anxiety. All right, when am I going to cut out? Am I going to, is this person going to snitch on me? Okay, I'm out. Okay, am I going to get caught? Like, all right, what am I going to do? Like, where am I going to hide? Just so much more anxiety and just going to fucking school and doing your work. So I've been
Yeah.
in that position before. From my personal experience, I don't think it pays off because you're filled with like so much tension, anxiety, and stress from doing the wrong thing that you're doing the wrong thing, and
Yeah.
getting discovered. It's just it takes less effort just to do the right fucking thing. But any pep talk I can think of, it's just like I'm talking to myself because it goes nowhere. You talk to these people, they're like, "Yeah, I get it. Yeah, yeah." And you're just thinking, "You motherfucker!" Like you're telling me this, but I've done this enough. Like I can see past your like vacant eyes. I know what you're thinking. It's just like, when is this meeting going to be over? Because the next fucking day you do the same stupid shit. So I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know. But you're
Yeah.
lucky you're a freelancer. You don't have to deal with this stuff as much.
Well, I suppose in some ways, but then you're always wondering where your next job is coming from. So you're You don't feel that security of having a job that you just know is there. And also, going back to the idea of not doing good work. I mean, when you're a freelancer, you pretty much have to, otherwise you're just not going to get hired the next time. But if you have a permanent job, maybe you can get away with a little more, not doing things here and there. But not that that's a goal or anything. But, I just had this conversation the other day about how I've got to deliver this work and it's really stressing me out. But I'm going to deliver it, I'm going to deliver it the day it's due. Because if I don't, like what you're saying there, I'm going to feel much worse if I miss the deadline and if I fail to deliver and if I have to ask for extensions. And, I don't know how some people manage that, where they just keep on not delivering, and even to the point of disappearing and not answering their phone for a few days. I would feel just way more stressed out than simply doing the job and getting it in, as you say.
Yeah. Have you ever been in a position doing 9 to 5s, or you always freelance?
Well, when I was young, I worked in restaurants, so I had regular jobs, I guess, in that way. Um, but yeah, they weren't jobs that I particularly cared about. They were just kind of minimum wage, you know, working in a restaurant. And at some point, I decided it wasn't worth it anymore. The last place I worked, it was actually a terrible, terrible place to work. They would call it a toxic work environment these days. At the time, they just had no terms for it, but it was
Yeah,
a
it was called
place with a,
shitty.
yeah, exactly. That was the official term, I think, shitty. And yeah, there were so many supervisors and managers, and one person would tell you do it this way, and then someone else would come along and yell at you for doing it the wrong way, and it was just a terrible, terrible place. So after about 6 weeks of working there, I just quit, and I kind of decided I wasn't going to do that anymore, and I was just going to try and do my own thing, and I was sort of working in theater at the time and trying to do films, and um, so that's kind of been it for me, and it's been a struggle. I don't make as much money as people who have a regular job, but I guess in some ways I'm doing what I want to do.
Yeah, as long as you can stay self-motivated, because that's my problem. Like outside of, if I have absolutely no structure, it's hard to be self-motivated at times. Like I can get self-motivated for like a few months, but then I'll just go a few months of just like doing nothing with my free time. So I need like a middle ground where I have some structure to keep my shit together, but then the freedom also to do what I want. And it's just hard for me to get that sweet spot. But that's what I'm looking for. Like I just I'm hoping in January when I transition, because the thing about managing is like people are fucking babies. Like you got to be like, no, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that, don't do, no, naughty. I'm tired of fucking babysitting adults. So it's just like when I transition away from managing into general managing, I'm hoping I can take a step back, and then it'll give me that more of a balance where it's just like, all right, if I can just focus on the finances of the hotel instead of the day-to-day, like looking over, what are you doing there, looking over people's shoulder, then maybe I'll have more free time to like focus on films and still have something where I can get the stable paycheck as well. But dude,
Yeah.
anyone asks me, man, never fucking manage, man. Never fucking manage. People are the worst, man. They're the fucking worst. So, but hey, this is
Yeah.
supposed to be an escape, right?
Yes.
Let's escape into this movie. So,
All right.
this is actually supposed to take place for October. And
Yes.
ironically, we're supposed to do a couple of horror films after this. And October is over. We're already halfway through November. But
Yes.
but yeah, so this is only the second horror film we've done back to back. We were supposed to do like 4 or 5. But this is a good one though. This is a really good one.
Yes. Now we did do one, if I'm remembering correctly. We did record a second one,
No, you're right. We
but
did three. We did three. I
yeah,
just haven't
yeah,
finished editing The Descent. So
that's right. Yeah,
Vampire was good. Vampire got a decent amount of
yes,
hits too, so people liked
yeah,
it. This Descent I haven't found time to edit, but yeah, I plan on editing that soon because I don't want to
yes,
get backlogged with stuff to edit. I hate editing, so I don't want to get
Right.
backlogged. So The Descent is next, and then this comes up.
Yeah. So this is technically the third, except that the second one hasn't seen the light of day
No, it's yeah. You see, I like that. I like
yet. Yeah.
that. The Descent, the light of
Yes.
day. Yeah. Did you
Wow.
not do that on purpose?
No, I didn't. It just comes naturally, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I mean, that was the Descent is a fun record. I mean, the one thing I was able to accomplish though in my prep for the edit for the Descent, I did come up with some intros for the various segments. My segment to start, your segment with the breakdown of the film, outros, different music, thumbnails. So there's a lot of things to pretty up the videos that I was able to accomplish. So there's the intro and thumbnail for the full podcast, which includes some of this banter that we do before we get to the movie. And then there's the podcast without the banter. And then there's the my section and then your section. So the podcast has about 4 different videos and 4 different sections that are all titled, and then and 4 different intros, and yeah. So a lot of stuff was able to accomplish. So that when I eventually do get the Descent to see the light of day, it'll look a little bit prettier than the other videos. So
Awesome. Yeah, I know you've been doing a lot of good work. I haven't seen all of that, but I know what I've seen. It's really looking good.
yeah, just trying to make it look a little bit more professional. So
Yeah. Why not?
yeah. So The Exorcist. Uh, this. So before I became a huge Stanley Kubrick a Stanley.
Yeah.
I I I remember a filmmaker friend of mine. We were making films together at the time, and I forgot how it came up, but he asked me like, "Hey, like, what's your favorite horror movie?" And I said, there are a lot of good ones, but kind of like I don't remember my exact answer, but I do know I was leaning towards like there were like a few that were just on even ground. I think I said maybe The Omen, The Exorcist, and The Shining were just kind of like my 3 favorites, and it's hard for me to pick one. And then
Mm.
it just got really combative and shitty, or as they would say in these days, toxic from there. And and we started
Yes.
like clashing heads because he's like, dude, Kubrick, like fucking Kubrick. What the hell are you talking about? I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, they're all good movies. And that's the origin story of where I started to become a Kubrick fan, where I started like, really diving into his movies. I'm like, oh, The Shining is the greatest shit in the world, man. It's just fucking awesome, and it's better than everything else. But prior to that, this was up there with my favorite horror movies. And I think, this is a film I've revisited a few times, but haven't revisited in a while. So I was excited to get back into this and to see like what I would think about it, since I think that was the last time like I really put any real thought into this film. But it was fun to revisit it. And I didn't know that the director also did The French Connection, which is
Mm.
another awesome movie that I love,
Yes.
that Friedkin did. And so I listened to some of his director commentary. Oh my God, his director commentary was just. Dude, I listened to interviews, director commentary, read up on him. He's an incredibly fascinating guy, but he is such a guy from the 70s. It's
Oh
just
yeah.
mind-boggling. But yeah, excited about the director, excited about the film, and excited we got to do this, dive into this movie.
Yeah, me too. This is a movie I first saw when I was 12 years old. It's kind of a bit of a side story, but my brother and I had to
How dare
sleep
you
in
go into a side story?
the. Well,
Someone on this podcast going into side stories? That's
yes, I know, I
that
know.
does
So
not belong on this show.
this is why we need the professional logos, because what happens in the show isn't professional. So we need something to be
Yeah,
professional.
there you
Yeah.
go. Yeah.
So, but yeah, this one summer, my brother and I, we had to sleep in the dining room because there were some renovations going on on the second floor of the house, and we had to get out of our bedrooms, and so we slept in the dining room, and that was actually exciting because we call it the dining room, but it was actually more like a family room in a way. There was a
So
TV in
was
it.
it like a duplex where all the bedrooms were on the second floor and then everything else was on the ground floor?
Yeah, it was a freestanding house, so yeah, it had bedrooms on the second floor, and the main floor had a kitchen, living room, and dining room. But there
Because
was
yeah, because like in New York, you don't get that as much. So for
no,
instance, in my house, it's not so much a duplex as it is you have like it's almost broken up into different apartments. When you get on the
right,
second floor, you have your own set of, you know, so
sure, yeah. Well, this was just a freestanding house, and yeah, the dining room, for whatever reason, we usually ate in the kitchen as a family. So the dining room, we had a TV and there were some chairs, and occasionally there might be, a meal eaten in there, but it was mainly just a place for the kids to watch TV. Um, but so yeah, being in the dining room and sleeping in the dining room, that meant we had a TV and we could watch things late at night when we're supposed to be asleep. So there
did
were
you have
lots of
cable?
interest. Yeah, we had cable. Um,
Well, that's the main thing because if you just have like network TV, you're just staying up to watch like infomercials and stuff like that, right?
that's true. Yeah, and I think in the early days we just had not cable. We just had regular TV, but at some point we got cable, and yeah, there were always interesting movies at midnight, and one of them was The Exorcist, and of course I'd heard about it, and I needed to see this movie, and so I watched it, and of course, it scared the crap out of me, when I was 12, and I remember actually when the movie was ending, I knew it was ending. I could tell we were at the end of the movie, and things had kind of worked out okay, and I was so disturbed by everything I'd seen that I was afraid to stay and watch the very end because I know so many horror films would end with one more scare, like the evil would come back, the monster would be alive. And so I thought, oh no, 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 I can't risk this. So I actually left the room and I went to the bathroom. And when I came back, the credits were rolling. And as it turns out, it was okay because The Exorcist doesn't really have one of those kind of endings. So I could have stayed, but that's how disturbed I was that I was just like, I got to leave the room because if the evil comes back, I'm not going to get to sleep. I'm going to be awake all night. So that was definitely a seminal viewing experience for me, and of course I've seen The Exorcist many, many times over the years since then.
How old were you when you first saw it?
12. I was 12, and yeah, so it's definitely probably I think one of the best horror films, and I know a lot of people cite it as what they think is the greatest horror film, and I can see that. I can see it's a very, very good movie.
Yeah, I mean, despite the fact that I like The Shining more, I would consider this. I wouldn't argue with anyone that thought this was better because when you look at it from all aspects, it's just not. It's just not one category that makes a film good or successful. You have to look at it from all quadrants. So, is it financially successful? Which The Shining really wasn't. Was it a cultural phenomenon? The Shining wasn't. And was it critically acclaimed? Yeah, they both were. Is it a cult film? Yeah, they both were. Are they both historically important? Yeah, they both were. So every aspects that The Shining, I guess, was more cutting edge because of the Steadicam stuff. So from a technological pushing technology forward, like pushing film forward, I guess The Shining would have the edge there. But for the most part, a lot of the positives that The Shining has, The Exorcist also has, but then The Exorcist has the commercial success and the cultural phenomenon that The Shining never did. And also, it spawned. This was interesting watching it because you think of like Halloween and you think of Frankenstein and Friday the 13th and Hellraiser and Child's Play. You think of all these movies and when they're successful and they spawn these sequels, they're forming these franchises that go on and on and on, and these characters that you dress up as Halloween, but you're not really dressing up as anyone from Halloween. Like, I guess maybe you can dress up like Reagan, but for the most part, like, you're not dressing up like characters from this movie. So you don't have like that commercial, like, thing that keeps going where you're making money off of the dolls and things like that, or the costumes. And the franchise, although I've heard, like, I think part three or something is like really good, the franchise wasn't really successful. I know it was sold recently to Blumhouse, and there was a recent remake, but it wasn't, and not a remake, a sequel in the lineage of the films. It wasn't really that. I think it was like bombed. It lost money. But what's interesting about this film is, despite the cultural phenomenon, the franchises didn't benefit from it, but it almost created another subgenre of horror in Exorcist movies. So that I thought that was pretty interesting, in that, yeah, The Exorcist, it's almost, even though it's not a standalone movie, it's almost a standalone movie, because all the success of The Exorcist were other Exorcist movies that didn't financially benefit the franchise. Like, how many Exorcist movies or movies with Exorcist in the title aren't part of The Exorcist? You can't say that about Friday the 13th. If you put Friday the 13th in your title, you're a sequel, or you're going to get sued, but you can put The Exorcist in a title and do the same things that The Exorcist did and just be your own complete movie. So I thought that was interesting as well.
Yeah, and what you're saying about Friday the 13th, even the official sequels, Jason Goes to Hell and Jason X, they're not allowed to use Friday the 13th because they didn't buy the rights to the title. They just bought the rights to the character. So that's really interesting too. But you're right. There's so many exorcism movies. The Italians really got into it, right? They saw this movie and they went, "Ooh, we can do this," and they made all kinds of. And they really kind of ramped up the sex and the exploitation and all that stuff, and really made a lot of them quite sleazy. I think one of them was called The Sexorcist, maybe. So yeah, there was a huge phenomenon. And movies like The Omen that you mentioned, I think they got made because of the success of The Exorcist.
Was The Omen first?
I don't think so. I think this one was first, and then I think movies like The Omen and even the Amityville Horror that came out after. And there were a lot of sort of supernatural kind of movies that came out with big budgets, and I think they were greatly influenced by the success of this movie, because they realized, hey, we can make a big budget movie, a horror movie, a supernatural movie, and we can possibly have a big hit. Okay. So, yeah, it's sort of had not just direct rip-offs and sequels, but just the idea of making these kind of big budget supernatural movies. The Exorcist kind of led the way.
Yeah, it's funny when you said the Omen thing, because I was listening to this interview. I don't know if it was an interview or the commentary with Friedkin, because I did so much listening to his stuff, especially since we were delayed. But he mentioned the Omen, and he mentioned Rosemary's Baby. So I guess when he spoke about this was after, like, well after the movie came out then. But yeah. Before this interview I heard before I rewatched the movie, and this is where one of the many fascinating things that I heard him say that just made me chuckle out loud to myself, because I listen to a lot of this stuff sometimes when I'm cycling to work, and I'm just like cycling with my headset and just laughing to myself. People are looking at me like, what's this idiot doing? But he said that he actually insulted The Omen and Rosemary's Baby. He's like, yeah, I didn't want to do something like The Omen or Rosemary's Baby. I really want to do something really good. I'm like, what? Those movies aren't good? But yeah, I'm paraphrasing, but basically his main thought was he wanted to do something better than those movies, and he viewed this movie as superior to those. And in my mind, I always thought of them as similar because they all deal with like supernatural. They all have that slow-paced 70s feel to them. Mm-hmm. They all like depend on like atmosphere. They're all in kind of urbanish settings. So I view them as having a lot more in common than having more different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do too, and I think those are both really good movies as well. So I don't know what he would be talking about, but you know, he's definitely an opinionated guy, I guess.
Yeah, I think part of what he was saying was the horror aspect of it, in that
Mm.
they more played into the horror aspects that he didn't want to play into,
Oh yeah,
and he
yeah,
wanted to make more feel like documentary feel, more real feel, and he wanted
yeah,
to eliminate, like, from the original script, that I think the writer of the book did the script, and the original script had a lot of scares in it. He was like, take all this shit out. Like, this is not why I like the book. I liked it because it was a good story. Like, all this jump scare and all that, take it all out. Like,
yeah,
stop making it a horror film. Let's just make it a real story. And William Peter Blatty, I think, is the writer. So he actually made the original writer like change it more back to the book, where it's
yeah.
usually the opposite. Usually the writer of the book is like, hey, keep it more like my book, and then
Yes,
and the director then changes it. But I thought that was interesting as well.
yeah, definitely, definitely, and it's interesting too because I think last time we talked, I mentioned that one of my tests that I would sometimes put a movie to, a horror movie, was if you took the horror out of this, would this still be an interesting story? And I think that The Exorcist is a movie that you could actually take the horror out of it. You could take out the supernatural stuff, and you'd still be left with an interesting and a compelling story, I think, about a mother and a daughter dealing with an illness that can't be diagnosed and all the horrors of that. You know, it could be just a very intense drama. I think it could be done. I think there is enough going on here. It doesn't feel like, again, like Friday the 13th, where if you took the horror out, you'd be left with nothing. You know, just campers hanging out.
Yeah, I when I was watching the film, I think it was like 53 minutes in before anything like really like weird started happening. And I almost felt like, man, this film is so good. And the documentary feel, the slow pace, it's so much steeped in realism that I felt it would have benefited from what Freakin was saying, but even to go a step further, in that this happened to a little boy. I know the original priest that told him the story didn't want like the actual names or certain things to come out, but a lot of what surrounded the story was like, did this really happen? Is this real? Was it just like group hysteria? Or was he, was it just like a kid who was spasming out, and you made the kid believe that the devil was there just so that would be a way to calm the kid down? There was so much avenues of interpretation from the original story that I almost wish the movie did it that way. So when you
Mhm.
saw the first freak out, and I think like Reagan, like her neck was like pulsating like almost like a frog when it breathes, I was like, man, that's a great shot. But you almost wish that shot wasn't there, because if they would have just toned down the supernatural stuff a little bit, where it was just like you as a viewer would say, I wonder if this is really happening or if it's not real. But
Mm.
when those scenes happen, it's clear like, yeah, this is 100% supernatural.
Yeah.
As I was thinking that, but then every time a supernatural scene happened, I'm like, even though I thought like maybe the movie would be better without it, you're like, man, like that's an iconic shot. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, you
Yeah.
take out the supernatural, you take out all the iconic shots, the
Yeah.
peas elevating over the bed
Yeah.
lifting up, the
Yeah.
furniture like attacking people, the head spin, the crab walk down the stairs. Is like,
Mhm.
every time I kept thinking, man, they should take this stuff out. But everything iconic about this film are those shots of the supernatural stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And I know what you mean. And in some ways, it would be interesting if it was, you know, subtle in terms of is it real, is it not? But I think it is kind of good that it does commit to it being real because, you know, so many movies you'd be left with that feeling like, I don't know if this was real or not. But here they're basically saying, yeah, it's real. It's real. And, and I think it works. You know, I think it works on that level.
Yeah, I almost need to watch it again, because I kind of watched it through the lens of, man, these first 53 minutes are really good. Stick to what we're doing right now. Let's not go over the top. So I almost need to watch it again, um, going in with the perspective of I was wrong. The supernatural stuff works. Let me rewatch it one more time. But even as is, like I thought it was really well executed, the supernatural stuff, because there was proper build up, so it really paid off. Even like during the supernatural scenes, there were breaks. Even in that climax, there was that break where the two priests were sitting on the stairs, or when the one priest and the mother was downstairs. So there were like, it paced out really well.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think part of what I find interesting is that it's clearly real. Like this stuff is happening, and yet they're still not getting enough evidence to prove that it's an actual possession. Like the church has certain things. We need to hear this. We need to see that. You're seeing a lot of stuff here that's clearly messed up. But yet it's still. So I mean, that kind of helps with the feel of, okay, we think it's real, but at the same time, there are people going, I don't know if it's real. So that kind of maintains that level of questioning, I think.
Yeah, the one scene that made me, I don't know if I laughed out loud, but I laughed internally. I'm like, give me a fucking break. Like it was when the main priest, what was his name again?
Father Karras?
Yeah, Father Karras, Jason Miller. When
Yes.
he came down and he said, well, I did spray with holy water, but it was technically tap water. I'm like, fucking, who cares if it's tap water? Like, how much supernatural shit do you need to see? Like, okay,
yeah.
so it's tap water. Who gives a fuck? Like
Yeah.
it's like if you see
Yeah.
Superman flying around and he's like rescuing people and he's like using his laser vision, he's freezing, fires, and he's doing all this stuff. And someone brings out kryptonite and he's like, oh my god, kryptonite. But you're like, this Superman, he seems like he has powers, but that wasn't real kryptonite. It was just like a green rock. So I don't know if he really has all these powers. It's like, come on, dude,
Yeah, yeah. And it's like, they want to hear the possessed person speaking a language that they don't speak, a foreign language. And one of my favorite moments, even going back to when I was a kid, where he records what he thinks is a foreign language, but then when he takes it to an expert, it turns out it's English backwards.
Yeah.
So how is that less crazy and less supernatural? How can you speak English backwards? I mean, there's clearly something supernatural happening there. But yeah,
it almost felt like a parody at that point, just like it's almost making fun of those tropes where it's like the reluctant hero, the authority figures that won't believe you. Almost like they were like making fun of those tropes. But yeah, that was, I think all that happened in the same sequence, all those things.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
But yeah, definitely a worthwhile movie, definitely interesting movie to dive into. And like I said, I almost want to rewatch it again, having conceded that my preconceived notions of how it should play out, I think were wrong.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely a good enough movie that you could watch it again and probably enjoy it.
Absolutely. Okay, so we can cut there and we'll do another section when we come back because we have like 2 minutes left, and I think we pretty much covered that segment. Was there anything that we left out that you want to dive into?
No, I mean, there's always more you can say, but we'll just run out of time if we try. So
yeah, I kind of felt that was a good wind down. There's a few other things I want to mention, but I can mention them in your section, as you break it down.
For sure. And I'm going to try to keep it under control so that it doesn't get too crazy here.
It's fine. I mean, we haven't recorded in a while, so it's fine.
That's true. That's very true. Yes.
Okay, you okay? It looks like you're jittering a lot. Like you're
jittering?
Yeah, it sounds like you're bouncing a lot. I only say that because, like, dude, every day I go to work, it feels like everyone in the office has Tourette's because they're always like moving their legs. I'm like, stop doing that. So I've never seen you do that. Now I'm noticing like you're bouncing.
Well, I think I am. It's just nervous energy, I guess. Just I'm just psyched up. I don't know.
For the podcast or something else is going on?
Well, for the podcast, and also I guess I have work that I gotta finish.
You got to
And
get to
so,
after we finish.
yeah, but that's no problem. It's
Okay. No, I won't hold you up too long. Then we can go faster.
hello.
Yep. What's up?
I'm back, ready to go.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry about that. I didn't know till the end of the end of the first podcast when you mentioned that you're busy this week. We could have pushed it off another week.
No, I'm going to be busy every week. I mean, this is the thing, and what you were saying before about getting your work done and motivating and all that. Like, this is a big part of it. Like, I feel we were doing it every week for a while there, and it was working. Because I think there was a sense that we need to do this. We've got to do this every week, and so you feel like, oh yeah, I got to do it. But as soon as you let it go once, then it's easier to go, oh, well, we can push it off again, and we can push it off again. And I think that's how we didn't do one way back when for like 2 months or something. We had a huge layoff, because it's just easy to go, oh, this week's bad, this week's bad. But when you kind of force yourself and you say, no, it's got to happen, even if it's not quite as good as it might have been, with a little more time, it sort of forces you to just do it.
And that's good stuff there, man. I feel motivated.
All right. Excellent.
All right.
So we're ready to jump in?
It's your show. It's your show.
Okay. All right. So just a few words about the opening of The Exorcist. We start with sun over the desert, heat rising, people digging in northern Iraq, an archaeological dig, I assume. And a lot of stuff happens in this opening sequence, and it's all kind of weird, and it's kind of unnerving in a way. There's dogs fighting, there's rocks falling, men with guns. I feel like this opening sequence it's meant to make us feel kind of like, what's going on, and where are we? And there's just something a little disturbing about it. And we meet an older man played by Max von Sydow, and he turns out to be Father Merrin, who we will come to know later in the movie, but we don't really know anything about him at this point. And at one point he says that he has to do something. And he goes and he looks at this very evil looking statue that they must have unearthed in this archaeological dig. And I don't really know what it means, but sand blows, the bright red sun burns, and we dissolve to Georgetown, USA. So did you have any thoughts about this opening sequence?
I do. So first, let me go off on a tangent. No, I'm just joking. I'm gonna stick to the story. We already did our tangents. So I thought this was interesting, especially, your first time watching it, you may be like, oh, maybe this is about this character. Maybe we're going to be in the Middle East. And then we just cut away and we don't revisit this character till he comes back at the end. So it was interesting storytelling in that you're introducing this character who's going to come way at the end of the movie, and you're introducing the relationship with him and this demon, and also you're setting up the whole heart condition. So this, and also it's very little dialogue too, which works because obviously you're in the Middle East, a lot of people aren't going to be speaking English anyway. So there's a lot here that's just all set up for something that comes all the way at the end. And this movie as a whole is interesting because who's the main character? Generally, you start off your film with your main character. The first 5-10 minutes is dedicated to setting up your main character, and this sets it up. He is the exorcist in the title, The Exorcist. So in a way, he's the main character, but in a way, the other priest is the main character. In a way, Reagan's the main character, and in a way, there's so many people that potentially are the main characters. And then eventually when we get to the end of the movie, it's like, wait a minute, the movie ends with none of these people who we thought were the main character. So it's in a strange ensemble film that works, but this is part of where that whole ensembleness starts with this. And the other thing I take away from this is Max von Sydow, man. The second time we covered him, we also did The Seventh Seal. And I think as we go along with the No Rules Film School podcast, we're going to and also rewind, which is also part of this section that we're doing here, your section. We're going to come into more actors and performances like this, and it's going to make me reevaluate my ladder of favorite actors or greatest actors, because like there's so many great actors, but how do you define to you who's a great actor? You know, you can go by like, okay, who's in all the blockbusters that I love to watch? I mean, I love the Avengers, so oh man, like Iron Man is so great, like Robert Downey, he's the greatest actor of all time, or Tom Cruise, he's in all these, or Cary Grant, he's in all these old classic films, or for me, it's like James Cagney has all this energy. But to me, the more we do these films and the more we examine films, the more actors like Max von Sydow, or another film we did, Rashomon to Shura Mifune, the more these type of actors to me are going to rise on my list. The actors that have the nuances in their performances and also have the fortitude and the willingness to be picky with their projects and star in these films that are great, and that their nuanced performance elevated. So Van Sydow stuck out to me, and the formatting of how the story is going to be told stuck out to me.
Indeed. And so we do wind up in Georgetown, USA. And in a way, it feels like this is where the movie starts, because we're introduced to a few characters here. We're introduced to a mom and a daughter, Chris McNeil, who's a successful actress, and she seems to have a bunch of employees working for her, and her daughter, Reagan. And they seem to have a very good relationship. They seem to get along. There's also a father who's kind of absent, and Chris is kind of angry at him for not being present, even for the daughter's birthday. So there's clearly something going on there. At the same time, we meet a priest who's taking care of his elderly mother, and that is Father Karras, Damien Karras. And so we're kind of introduced to these two different storylines that are running parallel. There's a few interesting things that kind of pop up in here, like Chris thinks that she hears rats in the attic, but everybody says no, that's impossible. And later she finds Reagan is using a Ouija board, and there's this suggestion that there's something kind of sinister going on there. And I remember the first time I saw this movie, I was trying to relate that opening sequence to this, and where they find this little tiny statue that looks evil, as well as that giant big statue that looks evil. And when she talks about rats in the attic, I was waiting to find out, okay, is there something up in the attic that maybe got shipped there from Iraq, but I don't think there is. I don't think there's any connection there. I don't think we find that out. But anyway, so this kind of opening sequence, we really meet all these characters, and Father Karras, we learn that he is kind of, he's at a crisis point. He wants to move to New York to be close to his mother, who's ailing, and he also kind of wants to get out of his job. He feels that he's unfit. He's a psychiatrist for the church, and he feels like he's lost his faith. So that is a key theme that I think we're going to see running through this movie. Do you have anything to say about any of this?
No, I mean, the story's coming along well, establishing different characters. Yeah.
Okay.
We get introduced to some of the other main characters that we're going to be following the film.
Yeah. So I mentioned a couple of the weird things that happen, and again, there's the rats in the attic, and there were traps set out, but Chris goes up and looks. There's no rats in the traps. Traps are untouched. And meanwhile,
I'm sorry, there's one thing I'll mention, since you mentioned the rats in the attic thing.
Sure.
That was the first jump scare, and I remember reading how he took all the jump scares out of the film. I'm like, why did he leave that one in? It's just like,
well,
I'm like, of all the jump scares to leave in the film, is like, because when she's in the attic and the guy walks up behind her, it's like, that's a cheap jump scare you find in any like typical like movie. And he emphasized, William Friedkin, how he took all these things out of the film, and he chose to keep that one in there. That one kind of stuck out, because that's the only time it's like, oh, by the way, this is a horror movie, So I just thought that scene was kind of weird.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that, but I guess they felt they had to have one. But aside from the rats and the Ouija board, there's a scene where a
Oh,
priest.
I'm sorry.
Yes,
You keep mentioning things now. Did you mention the Ouija board and the rats before?
I did. I mentioned the Ouija board and the rats. Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I wasn't paying attention. I had to type out an email for work, so I lost my concentration for a second. That's why I was
Aha.
like, no, I don't
Okay.
have anything to say.
All
I'm
right.
sorry. I did want to mention something about the Ouija board. So
For sure.
William Friedkin, I his interviews, man, they gotta be listened and studied. But he did this interview. He was so degrading towards the lead actress in this movie. He
Ah.
was like, when I was casting this movie, he sounds like Donald Trump when you listen to his interviews. When I was casting this movie, I didn't want someone the studio wanted for the lead. They wanted Farrah Fawcett and all these other women. I wanted someone as plain as an old shopping cart. And he was like, this was the lead actress I needed for my film. Then they sent me to New York to meet up with this girl, this actress. I'm not going to say her name. I bump into her in the grocery store, and she looks so awful. Who's the girl he ended up casting in this film? What's her name?
Ellen Burstyn.
Ellen Burstyn. He's like, I called up Ellen. I said the part's yours. And Ellen was like, the part's mine. I thought you were going to New York to meet up with someone. I met her in a grocery store, and she looks so plain. There's no way I'm casting her. Ellen was like, well, I could have looked plain. Well, I didn't see you. So tough luck for her. So, and the reason I bring this up is because when they're doing the Ouija board scene, Reagan is like, is my mom pretty? And then the Ouija board doesn't move. So I'm like, is that him taking a shot as the lead actress? So I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah, when I saw that scene, it reminded me of the interview I heard, and I don't know. I thought it was a funny little thing to throw in there. So
Yeah, no, that's funny. I hadn't heard that. But yeah, the Ouija board, there is something going on there. When the mother tries to participate, it moves on its own, and she blames Reagan for that. And Reagan, of course, didn't do it. She says it's Captain Howdy.
yeah,
Captain
reminds me of The
Howdy.
Shining, like with
Yeah,
with
yeah,
Doc, So
yeah, yeah. And many years later, Witchboard will kind of deal with the same thing. But
well, not even the
yeah,
Witchboard, but the fact that Captain Howdy is the demon.
right.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
for
it's
sure.
like the demon is introduced to her, and she's thinking it's before it actually possesses her. She thinks
Yes.
it's kind of her friend. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so meanwhile, at the church, they discover that the church has been desecrated. There's a statue with blood all over it. There's something happened there. Um, and so there are these weird little sort of possibly supernatural or at least strange things going on. And, you could kind of look at any one of them as a possible starting point, like using the Ouija board. Is she stirring up the evil spirits by doing that? But wait a minute, the rats were already in the attic, and this thing that happens at the church, and it's like, and then what about Iraq, where with the scary statues, and so it's hard to know what the entry point is here of the evil. But in any case, um, Father Karras's mother winds up dying, and he's very disturbed by this. He feels he should have been there. He's feeling guilty. He has nightmares about it. And around the same time, Reagan's behavior really starts going sideways. She sort of pretends to be asleep when her mother's talking to her, and they have a really good relationship, as we've seen earlier in the movie. But then she opens her eyes when her mom leaves, and the one scene that I remember really disturbing me when I was young was when her mother's having this big party, and she's up in bed sleeping, and she comes down all of a sudden, and she says to this astronaut, "You're going to die up there." And then she pees on the floor. And I don't know why, but that moment just really stuck with me when I was 12. It's like, whoa, this is just like really disturbing. And very shortly after that, Reagan, she had commented to her mom earlier that she couldn't sleep because her bed was shaking, which just seems a bit odd, and her mom doesn't take it very seriously. But then in this moment, after her mom puts her to bed, she hears Reagan screaming, and she runs back in, and she sees the entire bed shaking. So this is a moment where, as we were talking about, they're kind of revealing to you that this is real. Like something's really going on here. Like we've had a few weird things happen, but we're seeing the bed moving. And there's pretty much no way that could just be happening. It's not like a truck driving by the house and shaking the house. This is like a serious thing. So anyway, do you have any thoughts about any of this stuff?
Yeah, this is again, I said, until we actually see the supernatural stuff happening, how I wish they would have leaned more into the ambiguity of it. She's claiming her bed is shaken, like we don't really like see the supernatural stuff with the bed shaking. And then she also pees herself and says you're gonna die. And it's like all of that stuff is like, man, it's like it's really ambiguous. Like ambiguous?
Yeah.
Ambiguous.
Ambiguous. Yes.
I'll leave that in there.
Yeah.
It's really ambiguous. It's like, okay, is this happening? Is this not happening? And I was wishing it would lean more into that. But as we already established before in the other section we recorded, that I do agree eventually where they went with this, but this was before the supernatural stuff started happening. I like the ambiguity of everything going on.
Yeah, I did too. But I also found it very interesting and kind of refreshing in a way that the mother sees it happening, because as you've mentioned previously, often a character says, hey, this stuff's happening. And then every time another character comes in to see it, it's not happening anymore, right? And so they think this person's crazy. And so you kind of expect that's what's going to happen. But no, they let the mom see this. And so the mom is kind of brought into the reality that, yeah, something supernatural is going on.
So the mother saw the bed shaking at this point? I thought that happened later in the film. Oh.
No, it's right here, yeah. After
Okay.
after she gives her a bath, after the party and the peeing incidents, and then she puts her to bed, and then boom, she starts screaming in the bed. And yeah.
Okay, this happened after the peeing stuff.
After the peeing, yes.
Okay, yeah, I'm saying everything before the peeing. Yeah, the peeing and
Yes.
before. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And the bed shaking, this is where her neck blew up like a frog, right?
I think so. I'm not 100% sure. But
yeah, there was a point where the bed was shaking, she floated up, and then her neck was pulsating. Yeah. I think that was a 53-minute mark, I think.
That sounds about right. Yeah. Yeah. So then we start a new section of the movie at this point, which I like to call what is possibly the scathing indictment of the medical profession. This is the first time I saw the movie. I don't think it really struck me, but when I saw the movie again, when I was a little bit older, I was really struck by this section of the movie where the mom takes Reagan to various doctors to try and figure out what's going on, and it's just a nightmare. Like the doctors are all running these tests on her, and the tests are horrible, right? They're terrible. They're frightening. They're more disturbing in a way than the actual problem, and they're trying to diagnose her, but they're failing. They're coming up with all these false ideas, and this is something that has only become more resonant with me over the years as I've had to deal with aging parents going into the hospital, dealing with that kind of tunnel vision where doctors or nurses kind of get this idea and it's like, this is what's wrong, and yet they can't find any evidence of it, which is what's happening here. And I just find this section of the film, again, we're back to realism in a way, because it's all real world stuff, but it's kind of disturbing and it's kind of scary. And poor Reagan is like really kind of disturbed by a lot of it. This section of the movie I find very interesting. And they finally send her to see a psychiatrist. And when he tries to talk to her, she winds up assaulting him physically, which is a nice, interesting moment as well. So do you have any thoughts about this medical section of the movie?
Is this the part where they pierced her neck with and the blood started squishing out?
Yes, that's one of the many things.
That and the pee thing were like two of the
Yeah.
most like realistic things that kind of freak me the fuck out. It's like
Yes.
it's nothing supernatural about it, but just like seeing it was just so like cringy. It's like, oh my god, I had to look away.
Yeah. That's what I mean. It's like it's a nightmarish sequence, and then they've got her in that one machine that's spinning around her. It looks like some weird sci-fi thing, and she's kind of being tortured by it in a way.
Yeah,
It's a very disturbing sequence.
yeah,
Um, so meanwhile, her mom Chris comes home and makes a horrifying discovery that her director and her friend Burke is dead. He's died in a horrible accident, and he was supposed to be looking after Reagan. He was in the house, but they find him dead at the bottom of the concrete stairs just outside of the house. And it seems to me that the implication is that perhaps Reagan has somehow done this to him, because we've seen her physically attack the psychiatrist, and she was very strong. And so the suggestion that he was supposed to be taking care of her and then he's dead at the bottom of the stairs, I feel like they're dropping a hint here that this might be what has happened, and that's kind of a horrifying thought. And then a detective winds up showing up investigating, and he sort of goes down that path as well, like he's trying to figure out what happened here. And I feel like there's definitely the suggestion that maybe Reagan may have killed this guy. Do you have any thoughts about that?
yeah. So this is I mean, there's a lot. When you say you have a favorite character actor, there's so many great character actors, but this is a really good character actor. He was in a lot of the Lee J. Cobb, who plays
Mm-hmm.
this detective character. He was in a lot of those early um, films with the method actors. I think he was like in On the Waterfront,
Mm.
12 Angry Men, stuff like that. But I really remember him from On the Waterfront, and a few other films that he played like, bit parts in, which he kind of does here. But he's a really good character. I think he was in like, anyway, a few other films that were really good. He's one of those faces that you see in the background. It's like, oh yeah, I remember him. He's a good actor in a few other
Mm-hmm.
projects. But his character was supposed to have a spin-off series, and evidently it was stolen, or there was a very similar project out at the time, Columbo.
Oh, wow.
And it was this actor, it was a trench coat wearing detective who would pretend to have Alzheimer's, and he'd meet up with these people and whatever. People watching, a lot of people watching, it's like, Columbo, who's that? All this build up for Columbo. Who's Columbo? But Columbo is like an old detective show where, there'd be like a different person every week, and the guest star is always the killer at the end of the show. And but the main character basically was this detective. It was a prototype for it.
Hmm.
Absent-minded, detective wearing this raincoat that would come in and ask these innocuous questions and solve the mystery at the end. And yeah, that's the first thing I thought of. Is I remember hearing the backstory of that, and yeah, this is a really good actor. And again, he brings another perspective to the film, in this big ensemble cast. And we end up following his character towards the end, which again adds more dynamics to who are we following in this movie, whose story are we being told here.
Yeah, and you're right. He is great. He's a great actor, great character. I did not know about the Columbo thing, but now that you say it, yeah, I can totally see how he's a similar character, because he certainly has this style where he comes in and he kind of suggests things without really suggesting it, and kind of saying, how can it be, and he's like the guy you don't see coming, he's kind of putting it together, but he's not overtly doing anything, it seems.
Yeah.
So right after the detective leaves, after talking to Chris, one of the most notorious scenes in the movie occurs. This is the "Let Jesus Fuck You" scene, where Reagan is, I guess, masturbating with a crucifix, and there's blood, and she grabs onto her mother and pulls her face down into her bloody crotch and says, "Lick me." And obviously a very disturbing scene to a 12-year-old, but certainly anyone really, I think, would find this disturbing. And this moment, I believe, is kind of the last straw for a desperate mother. You know, when this happens, I think this is kind of like it. This is the turning point. But that's, to me, that's one of the iconic scenes which has been parodied and talked about. Do you have anything to say about that?
A lot to say about this. So I know this is going to disturb you because you love this film, but Paranormal Activity. Can we talk about Paranormal Activity?
Absolutely.
So, Paranormal Activity is another, again, super subtle supernatural film, or whatever. And you know, they borrow heavily from this film as well. And part of what made Paranormal Activity a huge hit is that it was a movie that was picked up by a studio at a time where a lot of projects were being transferred there and there wasn't a lot of release dates available. So the whole promotional team had a lot of time and they had nothing to promote. So they spent a lot of time promoting this little low budget shot on video film. And what they did was, I guess they were watching a lot of old movies when they were promoting this because they saw The Exorcist, like, oh, this promotion's great. Because a big part of what made The Exorcist so successful is its promotional campaign. And a lot of the footage of, like, it would just be people leaving the theater saying, oh my God, this movie is so scary, and people fainting, and yeah, it was just this whole thing of like, don't watch this movie. It's the church doesn't want you to watch it. No one wants you to watch it. It's too scary. Don't watch this movie. And just like audience reactions, leaving screenings and things like that. And basically, Paranormal Activity took that whole promotional campaign from The Exorcist for this movie. And I do agree. I mean, it's a great movie. That's why it was successful. It stood the test of time. It's historically important. It has one of the best marketing campaigns you can have, and it was even reused later on. I think it should have been reused even more, because what better way to promote a horror movie by saying, don't watch this horror movie, it's too scary. But with all of that said, everything this movie has going for it, honestly, the reason this movie became popular and the reason this movie made so much money is because you have a little girl cursing and saying a lot of fucked up shit and then fucking herself with a Jesus cross. Let's be honest. A lot of people went to this movie because they're like, they saw clips of this little girl cursing, and they're like, I gotta see this shit. And that's one of the more popular scenes in the movie, you know?
Yeah.
So when you boil down to it, sometimes it's just simple stuff like that. It's kind of like the Barbenheimer thing. Is the Barbie movie good? Did they spend a ton of money advertising it with all these innovative things, and they spent years planning out how this is going to be the summer of Barbie? Was Oppenheimer good? Yeah, of course. But you know what? The Mission Impossible was also good. Dead Reckoning. I think it was better than both of those movies. It's a great movie, but it made no money, and those movies made money because there was the whole Barbenheimer thing. And sometimes it has nothing to do with your movie, nothing to do with the advertising campaign, but just something happens that make people say, I gotta watch this movie. And suddenly Barbenheimer became a thing, and everyone wanted to see both of those movies. And no one saw Mission Impossible that came out the week before, but yet they're all great movies. And again, this movie, ton of great advertising, great movie, but you know what? This little girl fucking herself with the Jesus cross and cursing, and a lot of people had to see this movie, and I just had to get that rant out the way. I'm sorry.
No, I understand, and I think that you're right. Like, it's like having a really amazing gore shot in the middle of your movie, and everybody goes, oh my God, you got to see this gore shot, I think it is a bit like that. It's so offensive, it's so shocking, it's so outrageous, particularly for the time. Yeah, people just had to see that, and I get it. I totally get it. And that kind of takes us to the next section of the movie, which I would describe as Father Karras kind of investigating the situation skeptically, because Chris goes and talks to him, and she asks, how do I get an exorcism? And, the suggestion has been made by the psychiatrists or the doctors, that, well, you could do an exorcism. I mean, of course, it's bullshit. We don't believe in that. It's not that. But sometimes, for psychological reasons, if you do an exorcism, you might be able to convince the patient that they're cured. But she's now taking it to the next level and actually talking to a priest and saying, how do I get an exorcism? And he's basically like, oh, it's impossible. Nobody does it. And he can't really believe that it's necessary, and he agrees to see Regan, and he's clearly disturbed by what he sees, and he tries challenging this, well, I don't know what to call it, this entity or whatever is inside Regan. He tries to challenge it with questions and making suggestions, and basically the demon or whatever it is doesn't really cooperate. And then we have the famous pea soup moment where he's puked on. And I think Karras is clearly moved by all of this, and he feels that clearly there's something going on here, but he says he can't do an exorcism, and the church won't accept any of this as evidence. She needs to speak a language that she doesn't speak. But meanwhile, Regan had spoken to him about his dead mother, and so he asks Chris, well, did she know about that? Like, no, of course she didn't know about that. And so again, this is kind of probably weighing on his mind that there's something real going on here. But we get the holy water trick where he throws water on Regan, and Regan reacts as if it's really painful, but then he says later that it's not holy water, so it was a trick, and Regan or somebody is pretending that it's hurting them when it shouldn't be hurting them. So again, it's all this kind of, he's running tests, but he's not getting any satisfaction. He's trying to speak foreign languages, and he's not really getting the answers he wants. But then Regan does seem to speak a very strange language, and he records it, and then he plays the tape for an expert, and the expert says, well, that's English. And he reverses the tape, and basically she was speaking English backwards. And perhaps the last straw of this section is when Father Karras is called to the house by a servant who shows him that on Regan's skin, the words "help me" are kind of coming out of her, sort of forming in her skin. And so I think this is the point where he just decides he's got to do something, even though he can't really believe this is truly demonic possession. He's got to do something. Do you have anything to say about this section?
Yeah, was this the section when the demon first started speaking as his mother?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah. So this is like the demon playing psychological warfare. And you got to wonder, like, this demon is so, I mean, a demon being sadistic or redundant, right? But not only is it torturing this little girl physically, but he's torturing this priest mentally, bringing up the mother, even like bringing up the I think earlier in the film he saw some bum in the subway that said something to him, and then the demon repeated it. So part of it is like, is this demon playing psychological warfare with the priest, or is it just his own guilt and his own psychosis that's thinking that the demon is bringing these things up? Because even though it's a demon, how would the demon know any of that stuff? Because even he, as he's leaving, asks the mother, like, did you know this? Did I mention this to you, like, about my mother dying and stuff? So, like, even though it's a demon, like, how would the demon know any of those things? So it not only is the demon, like, sadistic, but also you have to wonder about the mental state of one of our, if not our lead character. Like, is he even mentally prepared to combat this thing? Because he's kind of losing his mind as well, where like maybe he's embellishing the things that the demon's even doing, kind of like the unreliable lead character type thing. So
yeah, well, he's losing his mind, and he's already told us he's lost his faith, so he doesn't really believe in this stuff. But he goes and he meets with his superiors at the church to try and get permission to do an exorcism, because he figures, well, why not? And they ask him, do you think this is real? Do you think this is a real possession? And he basically says no, but he thinks it meets the requirements at this point. So even now, even witnessing all the things he's witnessed, he still thinks, no, this isn't real, but he's willing to try it. And what I find really interesting about this is that this meeting with the church goes much better than you would think, because you kind of think the church is going to say, no, no, this is bullshit. You can't do it. Um, you kind of expect them to be unreasonable, but instead they're like very reasonable, and they suggest Father Marin could come and help him. And this is where we finally hear about Father Marin, who we kind of met in that opening sequence. And he's apparently an experienced exorcist who's been through this before, and it almost killed him. So I find that very interesting that the church they wind up being very reasonable in this moment. And so then Father Marin and Father Karras kind of join forces. And when Father Marin shows up in front of the house, we get one of the most iconic shots in horror history, perhaps maybe cinema history, the shot of him standing in front of the house and looking up at it. It's an iconic shot. If I'd thought of it, I would have worn a t-shirt that I have, which has this shot on it. It's such an iconic shot and a great sort of introduction to the character, although we did meet him earlier in the movie. Do you have anything to say at this point?
Cinema has a lot of great intro shots or iconic shots, but just character setup shots. I remember Stagecoach had this beautiful shot of a zoom in on a young John Wayne, and there's a lot of movies where they build up a character and they build up the character and they build up the character, and then the character comes on screen and it's just a beautiful shot. And I think, having it being introduced to this character in the Middle East before, and then you saw him, you saw what you saw some of the things he did, then you hear the buildup of him, and then, like you said, then to come in, I think it had like 3 or 4 iconic shots in a row. First, you had the shot of him outside the house, which again, it's the poster. And then you have the shot where she opens the door and his face is still shadowed. You have the shot of Regan half in shadow as he's approaching, and you see her close up. And it's just like, man, like, whew, what was in the water that day when they were coming up with that shot list, It was just like 3 or 4, like shot, boom, 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 like just a great shot composition for a few shots in a row. That was just like, yeah, that's how you introduce somebody.
Yeah, for sure. And I have to say, I love it when Father Marin comes in and he starts doing his thing. And he's basically telling Father Karras what to do and what not to do. And he has no patience for anything. And Father Karras keeps trying to tell him about the history of the case. Let me tell you about it. He's like, no, I don't need to hear any of that. We just need to proceed. We need to go forward with this. And they basically do. They just begin the ritual. And it gets really intense. And, this is probably arguably the most intense section of the movie, where they kind of do battle with the evil spirit, and we see the bed levitating, and this is a point where I think to myself, okay, Father Karras, who's lost his faith, he's now seeing the bed levitate, and he's seeing all this stuff, like this must be helping, right? This must be bringing his faith back to him. I mean, he's witnessing some stuff here that's pretty intense. And so, of course, Regan goes after Karras with talks of his mother again, and both priests wind up getting knocked down to the floor at one point, and then there's a shot where Regan is like, it seems like she's kneeling on the bed and she's gesturing wildly to some unseen god, and then, if I'm not mistaken, it looks to me like that statue from the beginning of the movie, the evil statue from the Iraq desert, appears sort of before her in some sort of vision. I have no idea what this means. Is this the connection? It's all very strange, but it's intense. And then Regan seems to fall into a slumber, and Father Marin suggests they take a break before they start again. And so they leave, and we take a break. And so, any thoughts on this first section of battle?
Yeah. I mean, this is why you go into the movie, right? You don't go into a movie, The Exorcist, for a shootout, or a comedy, or stand-up routine. You're going for The Exorcist, and this is the exorcism, and the exorcist is there. This is the exorcism, and this is, this is a really good scene. A lot of not lot of iconic shots, and you have the iconic. I mean, this film is filled with iconic shots, but it only has one real iconic line, and that's "The power of Christ compels you." The power of Christ compels
Yes,
you, and this is
yes.
this is where you have that iconic line. So, I loved it. I loved it, and I even loved that they took a break.
Mhm.
Because it fits the tone of the film. It's like you don't want like 30 minutes of like nonstop like sensory overload. It's like
Mhm.
they came in, you saw a lot of good shit, and then they went and regrouped. So I kind of like the pacing of it as well.
Yeah, for sure. It's incredibly intense and effective. And when they take the break, yeah, it's kind of like we need it as much as they do. So that's great. And Father Marin goes into the bathroom and he takes the heart medication, which we saw him doing at the beginning. And so that's tying in there. And Father Karras goes back into Reagan's room and he sees a vision of his mother again and he hears her voice and he winds up getting very upset. And Father Marin comes back in and basically tells him to leave. You are too affected here. You have to leave. So while Father Marin is alone with Reagan, Father Karras goes downstairs and talks to the mother, Chris. And Chris asks her, "Is Reagan going to die?" And he says no. And I feel like this is a moment for him where he kind of strengthens his resolve and he realizes he's got to pull himself together and do right here. So he heads back upstairs. And the doorbell rings at this point, and it's actually the detective showing up. But now we move into what is perhaps the final climactic sequence here, which maybe we could call Father Karras finishes it. Um, he enters the room and he finds that Father Marin is dead on the floor. And he tries to revive Father Marin, but it's no good. And I just want to note here that this is very interesting because this is an example where the movie kind of leaves out something that you think would be in there because we don't see what happens to Father Marin. He goes into the room, and then the next time we see him, he's dead. So we have to use our imagination in terms of what happened in there. So I find that very interesting, and it's strangely effective as well. And so Reagan starts to laugh at Father Karras, and this sends Karras into a rage. And he starts punching Reagan. And he says, "Take me, come into me." And suddenly, it seems like he becomes possessed. And he's moving towards Reagan as if he might kill her. But then Karras kind of gets control again, long enough to hurl himself out the window and presumably repeat the horrible death of Burke, which we heard about, as he hits that long stone staircase and goes down the stairs. Probably breaks every bone in his body. And the detective is there to witness this, witness the aftermath at least, and is obviously quite stunned by it. And Father Dyer, who is Father Karras' friend, who we've seen periodically throughout the film, he gives Father Karras the last rites. And amazingly, Karras is still alive even after that huge fall. And he's squeezing Father Dyer's hand. And I feel like this is the moment that kind of tells us that his faith has returned. He's getting the last rites. He's accepting the last rites. He's doing what he needs to do. So he is now back within the glory of heaven or whatever. He is now cured of his lack of faith by this horrible thing that happens. And that's sort of the bulk of the main part. And then after that is an epilogue. But before we get there, what are your thoughts on this section?
So a lot happens here. You have another quiet moment in the middle of The Exorcist where he's downstairs, Father Karras with the mother, and they're having a quiet moment. And upstairs, we have, Max von Sydow, our main exorcist, dies off screen. So both characters that Reagan kills, she kills them both off screen. I thought it was interesting to kill off like your big, you know, your big gun, off
Hmm.
screen. Especially the first time I saw it, I was like, "Whoa! Like, what happened there? Is he sleeping? Is it
Yes.
past the old guy's bedtime?" So,
Yes.
yeah. So I thought it was interesting to have him die off screen, and it opens the way for Karis to play hero. But just the way he bursts in that room and she's just like holding onto the bedpost, giggling like a little girl who did something naughty.
Yeah.
And you have so it was kind of like it was kind of like a play between, because you kind of had the demon and you had the little girl. That was kind of like a hybrid of she's acting like the little girl who did something naughty, but it's still the demon.
Hmm.
You didn't have that like mix, of the two. It almost seemed like a demonic little girl instead of a girl possessed by a demon. So I thought
Yes.
that whole scene played off pretty interestingly. And this was something that they were worried about, the producers and director, is in your climax, you have this man beating up a little girl. But they were
Yes.
saying like if
Yeah.
they did their job correctly, they'd know that he was just beating up the demon, not the little girl. But
Yes.
you can't help but chuckle a little bit at the visual of like the big climax of one of the greatest horror movies ever made is a grown man beating up like a little girl. So
Yes.
that was kind of hilarious. And obviously he plays the ultimate sacrifice you know, um, by taking the demon into himself and then sacrificing himself at the end. And you have
Yes.
to think, man, like a lot of people died for this girl to
Hmm.
survive. A lot of sacrifices were made
Yes.
for her to make it through all this. So, but
Yes.
yeah, definitely a worthy climax.
Yes. And
Beating up kids. I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
yes. Oh, well, like, again, it's like such a unique moment, watching. And they've set it up perfectly because he's a boxer, right? We've seen him training throughout the film. He's punching the bag, when his mother dies, he's punching the bag in frustration, and so he's ready to punch this little girl hard. He's really he's not gonna. Yeah, this is not a gentle beating. I think this is a serious.
I'm
Uh,
surprised like some TikToker hasn't made like a TikTok of him practicing in boxing with like Rocky music, and then at the end he beats up the little girl.
yeah, yeah. And I'm just remembering one of my friends, the first time he saw The Exorcist, his comment was that the ending is very sudden, and I was like, "What are you talking about, man?" But then the next time I watched the movie, I could see what he means, because in a way, you've got this big epic battle between the two priests and the demon, and then they take a break, and then we go back in, and it's really very fast. It's just like grab the girl, punch her demon into him, and he's out the window. Like, it's a very quick ending in a lot of ways. They don't drag it out, and I don't think it's a problem personally. I'd never noticed it really, but it is. They waste no time here, and I think the thing about Father Marin dying off screen, I think, in a way, they couldn't have done it any better if they had shown the death. I don't think it would be as effective. I think there is something to the idea that we walk in and he's dead, and that in itself is a shock. Although they've set it up because we've seen him taking the heart medication more than once, so we know that there is a risk there. And I think it's probably more effective that they didn't have some big battle scene between him and the demon kills him or something. Yeah, I think it works really well as it
It
is.
also leaves it open as to did the demon kill him or did his heart fail?
Exactly, yeah. And I always assumed that his heart gave out, perhaps in the midst of some kind of struggle. But yeah, I don't think of it as like Reagan choking him to death or anything like that. I think it was probably his heart. But it could be that she did something that really scared him or whatever and caused the heart attack. But we'll never know for sure. So moving along, we have the epilogue, and it's sometime later, and Reagan and her mom are packing up to leave, and they say their goodbyes, and Father Dyer comes by to say goodbye. And they kind of talk about the fact that Reagan doesn't remember any of this. She doesn't remember her ordeal at all. And they think that's a good idea. And then there's an interesting moment where she sees his collar and she's sort of moved to kiss him. And so, presumably, subconsciously, she's recognizing the fact that she's grateful to the priests who saved her from this evil. So, even though she doesn't remember it, I think she has some instinct there. And then they drive off. And Father Dyer looks down the long stone staircase pensively. And this is where, as a 12-year-old, I was like, oh, I got to get out of here. I cannot stay. Because if that demon comes back and attacks Father Dyer, I'm going to be very upset here. But it doesn't happen. He just looks down the stairs, presumably remembering everything, and we fade to black. And so there's no cheap ending to this movie. They don't put in a cheap jump scare at the end. They don't do anything like that. They just end the story in its logical way. And I like that. Any thoughts?
Yeah, it further makes me think that they ripped off Columbo, because this is how a lot of the Columbo episodes would end. He'd come in at the end, and he'd speak to everyone, and hey, you want to go out and get something to watch a movie? It's like, no, all right, let's get something. It just feels very Columbo-esque, the ending. Also, what's interesting too is the father that we do end with, the least prominent of the fathers that we followed, Father Dyer. In that scene where he's reading him his last rites, where she's desperately trying to do, because I think that's when he went to heaven or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm not religious. I'm not sure how that stuff works, but I think he needed to read it to him.
Yes.
But in that scene, Friedkin was getting frustrated. He wasn't getting the performance he wanted. And I think he's
Really?
like, "Hey, you trust me?" He's like, "Yeah, I trust you. You sure you trust me, right?" Smacked the shit out of him and said, "Go ahead and shoot the scene." So the scene where he's like, that close up where he's like begging for his last rites, Friedkin had just smacked him across the face to get like his eyes to tear up and to get that like raw motion from him. So
Wow.
just one of several stories from Friedkin that I heard of as I was doing this stuff. And you know what, I can't wait to do Chinatown at some point, because that's his other great movie that I'd like to get into. I can't imagine what a terror he was on set there. But yeah, I definitely admire him as a director, because the lengths he went to get this film done the way he wanted it done. And the film went through a lot of directors. I mean, a lot of Stanley Kubrick, they tried to get him to do it. They tried to get a lot of other prominent directors to do it, and they either turned it down or weren't available. And the writer really wanted Friedkin because of some meeting he had where the project fell through, but he admired the fact that he was so passionate to get things done on his terms, that he thought like, yeah, this is the guy that I want doing my movie. Blatty, the writer. So yeah, I think this was a great choice, especially when you hear about the changes that Friedkin made to the script that Blatty wrote. I think all the changes helped it, or otherwise you would have ended up with a pretty standard horror film. And I gotta say, man, I came out of this. I like Van Sydow even more. I love Friedkin because just like the audacity to say, like, yeah, this has to be something better than The Omen or Rosemary's Baby. I wanted something. The fact that his standard is movies that we consider great, like, this has to be better than that. Talking about these movies like they're like run-of-the-mill horror movies, but you gotta admire him. He made movies up until I think the year he died, which was earlier this year. He died. I know he made a movie with Matthew McConaughey that was really good as well a few years ago. So he was making good movies for a while. I mean, these were his two standouts, and probably the only two that would fit the criteria of what we're looking to cover. But yeah, definitely came out of this admiring him as well.
Yeah, he definitely had an interesting career, and I think it was a bit hit and miss in terms of, some of the movies were great, some of them were not as great, some of them were big hits, some of them were flops. But he certainly made it his share of good movies, and most of them are worth watching. I think one that people are kind of excited about is Sorcerer,
Mm.
which is about a truck driver or a convoy of trucks moving, I believe, nitroglycerin through very difficult roads. And it's a suspense film. And I think he made that film, if I remember correctly, I think he made it the same year as Star Wars, and kind of thought that it would be a big success. But of course, it was completely ignored, and Star Wars became a big success. But I think it's a pretty great movie, worth
Yeah, I
seeing.
haven't seen it, but I mean, I definitely would be interested in watching it now that I've seen more of it, I've examined his work, even though I'd already seen this movie a few times, looking at it, the way we look at it for the Film Room podcast, No
Yeah,
Rules Film School podcast. The only reason I would say the only film that really meets our criteria is The French Connection is because if we were to visit Sorcerer, there was another film that was it was either based on or based on the same material of The Wages
yeah,
of Fear from 1953, which is a film
yes,
I saw once, but I do believe that's a superior film. And
oh
if we
yeah,
were to watch something based on that material for the show, I think it would probably be Wages of Fear instead of that.
yeah.
Um,
Well, that's it.
again, I'm sure Sorcerer is a good movie, but as
Yeah,
far as for the podcast itself, I don't think it. I think Wages of Fear would probably be a better fit for what we're looking for.
yeah,
And I think the other films he was known for, To Live and Die in L.A. and Killer
yes,
Joe, the movie he made with Matthew McConaughey, which is I guess over a decade ago. I thought it was just a couple years ago, but it's
yeah,
kind of old as well. I think those are very good films too, but I don't know if they quite are meet the level of what we're looking for with what we're aiming for with this podcast. So I would think
yeah,
French Connection would be the definite shoe in,
yes,
and
yes,
maybe one
yeah,
of those at a later date.
yeah, yeah, for sure. One other thing that I meant to say is uh, watching The Exorcist now with very modern eyes, I couldn't help but notice that the Catholic Church and the Catholic priests come off looking pretty good. It's a pretty positive portrayal of
They
them.
better, because that's a different time. You couldn't make
Yes.
them look bad and get away with this movie.
No. But it's interesting because now, with all the scandals, all the things that have come out about what priests have been doing and what the church may or may not have been doing, or at least turning a blind eye to. And so it's kind of interesting to see that at this point they were just, above reproach, and they're really, admirable in this movie, and I think it's fine and it works in this movie. But watching it now, it's kind of hard to not think about the fact that, gee, I wonder, what were these guys really up to? Or were
It's
they
kind of
really?
interesting because back then you couldn't really go against the church, but you could
Mhm.
go against the military because there was a lot of wars being fought there. That was just like around, like, should we really be here? You know,
Yeah,
and obviously a lot of wars prior to that, but now if you're anti patriotism, you forget it.
mhm.
One of the biggest movies I think of last year or the year before, Top Gun. It was all about patriotism. If
Yeah,
you're patriotism, you couldn't get a movie done back then. Ton of movies, Full Metal Jacket, all
oh
this
yeah,
anti-war movies. It were easy to get done. And now
yeah,
it's the exact opposite. Like, back then you couldn't be anti-religion. Now being anti-religion is not a big deal. Who cares?
yeah,
You can do
yeah,
as many anti-religious stuff as you can. So the zeitgeist of like what society accepts and how we view things, it kind of flipped with those two things.
yeah. That's true. That's an interesting point. But I wonder if the new Exorcist movie, which I have not seen,
I
and
don't
I
think
don't know
anyone has. I think
that.
that's
Yeah.
that's the problem.
Well, and I think the people who have been fairly negative.
They
Or
wish they missed it as well.
yeah, but you know, I wonder, do they add in any sort of nuance to the Catholic Church and the Catholic priests? Do they deal with that at all, or are they still just kind of above
But that's the
reproach?
problem, though. I think that's the problem with redoing The Exorcist is that it's pro religion, and we're
Hmm.
more nuanced with religion now than we were then.
Yeah,
So having this, and there's so many religions that are accepted now than were back
hmm,
then. It's just
yeah,
like, oh, you believe in God and Jesus, and like, yeah, that's ubiquitous. That's what you do when you
yeah,
talk about religion. Now it's like, no, it's a lot more nuanced.
yeah,
Of
yeah,
your beliefs and things like that, and audiences that you're trying to reach with their different beliefs. So it's
yeah,
hard to have a movie like that. That'd be like doing Dracula and focusing completely on the religious aspects of Dracula. There's a religious aspect of Dracula with the cross and all that stuff, but
hmm,
if you focus on that, you could never get a Dracula movie made because it's too narrow of an audience. So
yeah,
I'm not saying that's the major problem of why The Exorcist didn't work, but it's one of the problems, and that
yeah.
you have to be pro. Uh, what's the word for Catholics? I mispronounced another word early in the
Uh,
podcast. Is Catholicism?
Catholicism,
Yeah,
Catholicism,
I
yeah,
was
yeah.
gonna say Catholicism, but I'm like, let me not fuck up like I did earlier. But yeah,
uh,
Catholicism, it's not ubiquitous anymore. It's not something that's just like, oh yeah, we'll accept that.
yeah,
It's too nuanced to be all about that.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And I guess this new Exorcist movie was made by that same guy who did the recent
Blumhouse.
Halloween. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
recent
They
Halloween
paid a
trilogy.
lot, they paid a lot of movie for the rights to Exorcism, and it's like, why? You could
Yeah,
just say you could add Exorcism to any title, and it would be just as valuable as if you bought the rights to The Exorcist.
yeah,
How
yeah,
many people even know? The
yeah,
audience you now, like this movie was made in 73, or
hmm,
released in 73. Like,
yeah.
where that's 50 years ago. Like,
That's
how many
right. Yeah,
people, like, your audience is probably in their 20s? Like, who's paying to go to a movie theater? Probably people in their
yeah,
20s or 30s. They weren't
yeah,
even born. It's
yeah,
like maybe their parents saw this movie. So
yeah,
it's like the name has no value.
yeah. And they've certainly made a lot of sort of possession movies in recent years. Like you could make a movie about demonic possession. You don't have to call it The
Uh,
Exorcist, or
But you
you
could put
know.
The Exorcist in the title though,
Well,
and
yeah, you
still not
could.
have. You
Yeah,
could say
yeah,
American Exorcist, and it has
yeah.
nothing to do with the Exorcist
That's true.
franchise, but
Yeah,
legally you can get away with it.
yeah. That is absolutely true. And I wonder what they're going to do now because they planned three movies. Are they going to go through with the other two, or are they going to back out of that? What do you think?
They already spent the money. I don't know.
They're
You
going to
can't
try to do.
unspend the money. you know.
No, no, you can't. Are they going to try to do better on the second one then? Forget the first one. We've got a better one now. You
Yeah,
know,
they're
I
gonna.
don't know.
The sequel's gonna be a reboot.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. Oops, that was a mistake. We're starting over. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that must be it. Yeah,
Well, the good news is no one saw it, so they only have to apologize to like maybe 10 people.
yeah, that's true. That's helpful to them, I'm sure. Yeah, yeah. But you know, without a doubt, The Exorcist. As I said, I know people who say it's the greatest horror film ever made, and I can't really disagree. I have a hard time picking, my absolute favorites or the movies I think are absolutely the best. But it certainly would be on my list of greatest horror films ever made. And yeah, I think it stands the test of time. It's still as good today as it ever was. I enjoy it every time I see it. Um, yeah, I'm glad to have watched it again. It's been a while.
Yeah. For me, it's definitely top 10. Like I said, I have to rewatch it without my preconceived notions of like, yeah, maybe it should be better without the supernatural stuff. But either way, it's definitely top 10, possibly top 5, maybe closest number 2. Who knows? There's so many great horror films. And horror
Yeah,
films aren't like other genres. It's not specific. So it's saying you can't say, well, what's the greatest slasher film? What's the greatest monster film? What's the greatest vampire film? If you're encompassing all of horror, it's a lot of movies to consider.
yeah,
But it's definitely a great movie. Like you said, it stands the test of time. And we're just gonna have to agree to disagree. I know you think Paranormal Activity is a far superior film. We're just gonna have to agree to disagree. I think this is better than Paranormal Activity. I know that hurts your heart to hear.
Yeah, that's a tough one, but yeah. And occasionally I do hear people say, "Oh, this movie is like this generation's Exorcist," or "This movie is as good as The Exorcist." And I don't know. When I watch those movies, I don't think they're as good. I don't think they have it the way The Exorcist has. Except Paranormal Activity, that one maybe does. Other than that, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. All right, we can wrap it up there. Any thoughts on the noir we want to go with for next week?
I was trying to remember. It's been so long. What were the four that we had kind of decided on?
I think we were thinking about a Fritz Lang one. We were thinking about a Kubrick one. We were thinking about a Billy Wilder one. We were thinking about Orson Welles one.
I think we sort of had four that we narrowed it down to. Was the Killing? Was that one of them?
The Killing. That was the Kubrick. For Welles, I think we were gonna go with the one where he's older and fat. And
the
Charlton Heston's Touch of Evil.
Touch of Evil, yes.
I think we were gonna go with Fritz Lang, maybe The Big Heat.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
And then it was either like maybe like The Postman Rings Twice or something, or Asphalt Jungle, maybe.
Yeah. I think it might have been Asphalt Jungle.
Honestly, is Rafifi? Is that a film noir? I know that's an old movie I never saw that I always wanted to see. I never saw it once.
I think it is. I think it's considered noir, and a lot of people swear by it, and I have not seen it either. So.
I've never seen it. It's one of those that always slipped by me. Let me see if it's categorized as noir.
It's been on my list as something I need to see.
Never seen that one. So IMDb, do they even have noir as a subcategory in IMDb? I don't see any genre. Oh, no, I don't think. Well, if IMDb has noir as a subgenre, it's not listing it there. Let me see all movie if that considers it a film noir. Otherwise, no, they don't list it. They first as a caper or a gangster film.
Oh, yeah.
So I guess it's kind of like a borderline noir. But I think if we're gonna go with Noirvember, we should go with like 100% noir, not anything like borderline.
Yeah, but I think you're right.
Otherwise, I think I'd like to even watch Rafifi even past November because I've never seen it, and I've always heard how great it was. So
yeah, me too. It's been on my list, so we should definitely do it.
But for Noirvember, I mean, I've only seen Asphalt Jungle once, so I wouldn't mind seeing that again. And The Postman Rings Twice, I've seen that a couple of times. I remember not liking it a lot, but I wouldn't mind revisiting it because I've never heard anything but great things about it. There's this other movie. It's considered the greatest noir ever made.
Oh, yeah?
It's the one with Kirk Douglas. And fuck. Maybe I just search Kirk Douglas in all movies.
Is it Ace in the Hole?
No, that's not considered the greatest one ever made. It's good, but
it's a good movie.
Yeah, it's a very good movie. Let me search
Kirk Douglas.
I believe he was. Let's see. So I think he was young at the time too. So really.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Out of the Past.
Oh, yes.
I've seen that once or twice, but it's been a really long time. So just because I haven't seen them in a long, like I've seen all of Kubrick and Stanley Wells films like hundreds of times, not hundreds, but figuratively hundreds of times. So we can easily go with one of theirs, but the idea of seeing like a movie I haven't seen in a long time that I think I kind of liked, I would say Out of the Past, The Postman Always Rings Twice, and Concrete Jungle. Is that the Asphalt Jungle? Yeah, I'd say one of those three. What do you think?
I would probably narrow it down to either Out of the Past or The Asphalt Jungle. I don't know
Mhm.
why, but those two
Okay.
seem a little more exciting to me.
So
But
Jacques Turner, he did Out of the Past. He's the one that did a bunch of those really good horror movies, I
yeah, the
believe.
Val Lewton
Yeah, the
stuff.
Val Lewton stuff. Yeah,
Yeah, he's good.
he's good. And then you also have, I mean, isn't it what's his name that did the Asphalt Jungle? The
John,
that
John Huston.
John Huston. I mean, John Huston. I mean,
Yeah,
how can you go wrong with John Huston?
exactly.
Do you have a preference? I think they're both great.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time since I saw either of them, but I don't know. For some reason, maybe the Asphalt Jungle is just jumping out at me.
I'm good with either one, dude. I
Yeah.
think they're both great. Yeah.
Well,
And I
let's do
haven't
the
seen
Asphalt
either in
Jungle.
a long time. So
Yeah, let's do the
Asphalt?
Asphalt Jungle. Yeah,
Okay.
and then maybe we can squeeze in one more before the end of November.
Okay. Sounds good. All right.
Yeah,
Asphalt Jungle it is next week. I'm gonna try and get some of these episodes loaded up this week too.
yeah. Now I meant to ask the next time we spoke, and we kept not speaking.
Mhm.
I know you set up the Twitter account, and I was wondering, like,
Yeah, do you mind? I mean, I really set it up for you because I don't really
okay,
post on Twitter. If I
yeah,
was wondering if you could just post it on that
yeah,
account,
yeah,
and
I
then
totally,
you can tag both of us in there, and then we can
yeah,
just like it and repost it on our own
absolutely,
accounts. So
yeah,
it's
I
really
can.
for you. I did it.
Okay, okay, cool. I wondered if I should be taking that over. The other question I had though is, do you have a theory as to whether we should be just tweeting our own stuff on that account, or should we retweet other people in an effort to sort of generate goodwill and get retweets from other people?
I think we should generate goodwill, but
So
let's
give
just
me some.
generate goodwill not from like people that follow us, but directly related to what we're doing.
Yeah,
So like we're either part of a community or trying to grow a community
yeah,
that are like-minded as far as the films we're doing, Like
right,
I don't think we should like be retweeting or following people that aren't into the type of movies we're
right.
promoting, Like like Barbenheimer, we're not going to be
Yeah,
promoting stuff like that. Yeah. I think as long as it's like-minded people, we should
yeah,
definitely be retweeting and liking and following
yeah,
anyone that fits into those type of movies,
yeah,
so we can be a part
yeah,
of that community.
yeah. And one thing, like if we were doing, say, the Asphalt Jungle, and some other people that have tweeted about the Asphalt Jungle, we could retweet those, as
Yeah,
because we're on the
absolutely.
theme.
Yeah.
Like, so this week we're kind of retweeting the Asphalt Jungle, if you know what I
Mhm.
mean.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah. So yeah, I can do that. I can look into that. I wasn't sure also, now that we have rebranded as the No Rules Film School, should I still be sharing the old Sean Weathers show videos, or should I just stick to the No Rules Film School videos, if you know what I mean?
Um, no, you can retweet it. I mean, just
Yeah,
because it changed doesn't mean like we don't
yeah,
want those people to watch those shows.
yeah,
And what
yeah.
I've been doing is I've been reposting some of the old shows with the new
Okay.
intro and the new outro.
Oh, okay, cool.
So
Yeah,
so we have two of the same videos, but I mean, just to
yeah,
have the new rebranding. I'm not reposting all the videos. I'm just
yeah,
reposting like the full podcast videos. Like the sections I'll leave as is, but like the
yeah,
full whole podcasts, I've been
yeah,
reposting a couple of those, and I plan on reposting all of those
yeah,
with the No Rooms Film School intro and outro. So we have
yeah.
at least all of the full episodes we did together under that title. But
Okay.
as far as
Yeah,
like the section stuff, I'll just leave that as it is.
yeah, yeah. That sounds cool. Um, One other unrelated question. I know when we started doing this, you were kind of posting it as a podcast as well, like on Anchor or somewhere.
Mhm.
Is that something you still do, or are you kind of given up on that?
I just don't know how many people watch Anchor.
Yeah,
I can
yeah,
still do it. I mean, it just takes me like an extra 20 minutes maybe to do it.
yeah,
Um, I'm just not sure. It's hard to read because like Anchor sends
Yeah.
me this numbers. I'm like, there's no way that many people listening to us. So
Oh yeah.
I don't know how accurate their numbers are. But it doesn't hurt when I have the time. I can just do them all at the same time and catch up again.
Yeah.
But I do know that YouTube has a podcast section, so I started
Oh yeah.
listening
Okay.
the listing under podcasts on YouTube, but I think it still stays on YouTube. I know with
Yeah.
Anchor it goes to like iTunes and like Apple Music and stuff
Yeah.
like that. I just don't know like how to get people to listen to it on those platforms though. But
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
just bulk do it and
Yeah.
catch up, when I have time.
Yeah. And I know nothing about it. I was just asking out of curiosity whether that
Yeah, I
was.
stopped doing it
Yeah.
for the last few
Yeah.
episodes. So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's sounds good. Um, is there anything else we need to say or talk about
no.
at this point? No.
Next week next week Tuesday at 6, Asphalt Jungle.
Yeah.
Look forward to it. I haven't seen that movie in a long time. Get to see a young Marilyn Monroe, even though
Oh
she has a
yeah.
tiny role in there,
Yeah.
so that'll be interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And hopefully by next Tuesday, I will be done my one job. And then my other job, I might be kind of in between episodes depending on what happens. So I might be much more relaxed next Tuesday.
Less jittery. less Parkinson-y.
That's right. But seriously, like definitely Wednesday to Thursday, I'm probably going to be like pulling an all-nighter just to get everything done, and then I don't know. Tonight's probably going to be a long night as well, just because that seems to be what happens. You think you can get it done, but then there's 6 acts, and for some reason, the first act just takes forever. I don't know why, but I waste so much time putting that first act together, and I'm just kind of finishing Act 3 right now, and so that leaves me with 4, 5, and 6. So they are shorter, and they should be much easier.
How long are the scripts?
55 pages.
Oh, that's
like
almost feature length.
Yeah. Well,
for me, because my features are around an hour. So
yeah.
I suppose most features are probably closer to 120 pages, right?
Yeah, well, 90 to 120, yeah. And I mean, some features are shorter, of course, but yeah, it's I don't know why they want that many pages, because they're not going to use it all, but that's what they want.
How long is the final product?
It's probably about 45 minutes or so. So there's probably.
Well, I could see maybe they want some flexibility if a few scenes don't work to be able to like trim it down, rather than having just enough, and then a few scenes don't work, then you're like kind of screwed. You have to use them.
Yeah. Oh, and it's definitely better to have too much than not enough. Definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah. So next week, hopefully things will be looking up.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to even bring this up, because the last time we planned something, we saw how terrible it went.
Yes.
And that we're finally doing our third of 5 horror movies, and it's halfway through Noirvember.
Yes.
But something to consider as well. But again, I feel even terrible bringing this up because it doesn't seem like it's going to come to fruition, at least no time soon. Is guests on the show?
Oh yes. Yeah.
Because like I have a few filmmaking friends that maybe if they want to promote a movie, they can come on, and like if they're into horror movies, we can talk about a horror movie, and that way they can say, hey, by the way, at the end of the podcast, check out my movie. Because there's this, I bring it up now because there's this woman that I used to do reviews with noir movies, and I haven't been on Instagram in years, I think, but I know waiting for me are a few inbox messages from her because I see like the quick posts on my phone. Hey, you want to do a noir movie? Hey, you want to do a noir movie? I think like Noirvember would be perfect time to just add her to one of the podcasts, but planning that out and doing all that, we have to be a little bit more, like regimented, but something to consider in the future as well is like
Yeah,
occasionally having someone, that maybe is an expert or a fan of a certain thing, or like, hey, maybe this movie is their favorite movie ever, and it's a
yeah,
movie we happen to be covering. They can
yeah,
add a different perspective or something like that.
yeah, totally. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Um, I think we may have talked about this once before too. And again, planning, I hate to do it, but I noticed that some YouTubers, they'll have different shows, like sort of, it's really the same. It's really the same show, but they give it different names. So they say, today we're doing part of our series that we call, number one in our hearts or whatever. It's where we talk about songs that didn't make it to number one, but they're really good and we love them and we think they should have made it to number one. But other than that, it's like the same show. It's like the same format, but they just have this slightly different focus. Um, and so sometimes I wonder about that too, because I know we've talked about various different approaches that we could take. Like, focusing on a director and talking about the director's work, or, focusing on an actor and talking, like we could do episodes that are a little different than what we're currently doing, if you know what I mean.
Mhm.
But again, this is not something to worry about immediately, but just kind of, if we're looking for
Well, I've
ways to,
had that that was his name, Al Adamson, some
oh
documentary
yes,
that came out on him. I haven't
yes,
seen it yet, but I've been sitting on that for a while.
yeah.
So, I mean, we could do an episode where we just talk about. Have you seen that, or do you have it?
I have it. I haven't watched the documentary yet, but
I
I have.
haven't. I haven't watched it either. I mean,
Yeah,
we could watch that and talk about Al Adamson an
yeah,
episode.
yeah. I'd love that. I actually love Al Adamson.
Yeah,
He's one of my favorite sort of bad filmmakers.
I just can't get a copy of Satan Sadist.
Oh,
I
really?
can't find a copy of it because I was waiting till I got my hands on a copy, and I was gonna say,
Yeah,
hey, let's do the documentary and talk about Satan Sadist in an
yeah.
episode, kind of like how we did with what's her name, with my brother's
Doris.
wife. Yeah,
Yeah, Doris
kind of like a
Wishman.
Doris
Yeah,
Wishman thing. Like my brother's
yeah,
wife isn't worthy of a full episode, but if we combine that with talking about her career, it might be
yeah,
worth it. But yeah, let's
yeah,
discuss that in the future because we
yeah,
have like
yeah.
seconds left. So
That's right. Yeah,
maybe after November we can do that.
yeah, yeah. That sounds good. Um, yeah, and I love Satan Sadist, by the way. One of my
Yeah.
favorites.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sounds good to me.
All right, man. Sounds good. Talk to you next week.
Okay, yeah. Have a good week and good luck with everything.
Good luck with your writing, man.